Ever since the Intel Arc 700 series launched a few months back, Intel's been kind of quiet. Until today.
Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter. So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies.
So there's a little bit of a news piece here regarding a conversation that's taken place with Intel recently. Media was invited to some updates that they had coming for their Arc series. And initially I thought it was gonna be another card. I was hoping for like a 790, like a bigger card. But anyway, no, two things were kind of announced. One, the Arc A750, which was already the compelling 700 series graphics card because of the fact that you got a lot of the performance of a 770 for about $70 less, made it very compelling. Well, they just reduced the price from $270 down to $249, making it even more compelling. So rip anyone that just bought an Arc 750 recently, you could have had $20 more in your pocket. Let's not forget, Intel Arc has been the only graphics card, modern graphics card, that is occupying the entry-level space. Anywhere between around $200 to $250, up to maybe $300, is where most people shop for their graphics cards. Believe it or not, AMD and NVIDIA, most people are not shopping $1,500 graphics cards or even $1,000 graphics cards on the premise that it's a bargain when you compare it to the more expensive competitor. Most people spend at tops $300, maybe $350 if they save a little bit longer. So having the Intel Arc occupy that space and actually give some really decent performance compared to like 2060 Ti's and like 3050 Ti, 3060s made it a very compelling reason to go with Intel if you were just like, I don't want an NVIDIA or an AMD graphics card. The problem is it had some caveats to it. One, if you like to play older games that utilize DX9, good luck, because DX9 performance was pretty much non-existent because of the fact that it didn't actually have hardware designed to work with DX9. It emulated it. So not only did they announce a $20 price reduction for the 750, they've announced an up to 77% improvement for certain DX9 titles and improvement all the way up through the API stack till up to where we are now. So anywhere from like 10% improvement through a driver, by the way, up to 77% on older titles. Now, they really focused heavily on CSGO, and the reason for that was the fact that a ton of people still play CSGO, although it's a very old title. According to Steam statistics, apparently over 1 million players are still playing CSGO. And apparently over $145 million worth of prize winnings over 6,500 plus tournaments, and that, as long as that game has been around. So it's a major talking point. Now, if we go ahead and talk about some of the other 1080p performance titles and uplift that we've seen, and they really focused on 1080p here because that is where a lot of people are, most people are still gaming in their resolution is 1080p. And here's the thing, you got a 1080p panel, even if it's a high refresh rate panel, you don't need a 4080, you don't need a 4090, you don't need a 4070 Ti, heck, you barely need a 3060 if that, depending on the title. But the uplift here is pretty significant. So they checked, I mean, Stellaris, I don't even know what that game is. Lost Ark, I know Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, StarCraft 2, Guild Wars 2, League of Legends. I mean, you could still play that on a potato, but a lot of these games I've never heard of, but Rift, Payday 2, CSGO, Team Fortress 2, Left 4 Dead 2, Half-Life 2. The reason why I personally feel like these games might be relevant still, I tell people all the time, if you are just getting into PC gaming, and I've never really said this in a video, but I've talked about this with people I've met in person, online, friends of family, etc. And they're like, hey, I'm getting my first PC, what are some games you recommend? I always will recommend go to some classics. If you've never experienced PC gaming, there are tons of games that were exclusive to PC, although everyone likes to talk about console exclusives, PC exclusives as well. Games that just really propel PC gaming into the stratosphere, and you should go and experience those games. Graphics aside, great stories, just good experiences that are cheap on Steam, so you don't have to break the bank buying $60 games. Half-Life 2, one of them. Left 4 Dead with friends was fun, especially if you were doing the survival mode. I would love to see a new Left 4 Dead, but Left 4 Dead 2, amazing game. Even Left 4 Dead 1, amazing. Lots of shenanigans to be had with friends and stuff. Team Fortress 2, again, a classic. Again, a Source Engine game, doesn't take a lot of horsepower to run. But if you tried to run it on an art card that was not DX9 ready, it ran like crap. But the other thing that you had to have was smart access memory.
Turn it on.
Intel Arc architecture is more sensitive.
Which, anything like technically ninth gen for Intel has it, but it's funny because on some systems you can turn it on in the motherboard, but then the graphics card still says it doesn't exist. So technically it's like 10th gen and newer, I think 11th gen. And then AMD, I think back to like 2000 or 3000 series has smart access memory. But you gotta have that. If you don't have that on, the latency was really bad and then you would cut your FPS down quite a bit. But with some of this stuff now, I mean, look, we're seeing a 77% uplift in CSGO, 77% in Elder Scrolls. Now story-driven, Elder Scrolls Skyrim, definitely still a very popular game. Tons of people play it. League of Legends, 45%, Payday 2, 39%. Guild Wars 2 only saw a 10% uplift on that. Again, that's DX9 1080p Ultra. But seeing improvement through a driver which is free to anyone that has adopted Arc, and I've had quite a few people email me saying, hey, I bought an Arc 750, A750, and I love the card. Great. Seeing any sort of performance uplift through a driver is a positive thing to talk about. Now, the other thing, if we talk about 1440p gaming though, it seems to show up to an 87% uplift in like Stellaris. It's still 74% in CSGO. So you're seeing a pretty linear scale improvement with not just 1080p, but even 1440p. Although as the titles go downward, the chart seems to flatten quite a bit more quickly with 1440p. Again, the 770 would be a little bit more suited for 1440p gaming because it's just a little bit bigger die overall, just faster. But A750, perfectly reasonable card to be able to do 1440p gaming if you're shooting for that 60 FPS standard across the board. It's just nice to see this level of improvement through just a driver. Normally, I wouldn't just talk about drivers. I wouldn't just talk about drivers and say, hey, we don't even have it to test yet. But I wouldn't, when NVIDIA talked about their driver giving uplift across the board in all of their cards, it wasn't something I really talked about because it's the kind of thing you sort of expect with driver maturity. But it's important for Intel because of the fact that a lot of people have held off from adopting or even considering the Intel Arc series graphics cards. One, because of the DX9 performance. Two, because of the smart access memory. That sort of stuff, they're like asterisks that go on the card that's like, hey, it's a good card if or but. Seeing them continue to work on and mature the drivers shows that the hardware has a lot of potential. Now, what they don't show us in any of these charts, which I would have loved to have seen, is how the A770 is seeing improvements with this driver update. Because this driver update is gonna affect the A770 as well. But they're really driving home and focusing on the A750 because that is their new, at $249, being able to give you 1440p gaming, and then seeing any driver uplift at all with DX9, it's a positive story. And so it's worth talking about. If you're on the cusp right now of going, I don't have the money to spend on these stupid astronomical prices that people are asking for, I have realistic money to spend. Even $250 wouldn't get you anything at all from either NVIDIA or AMD. I mean, you'd be looking at some pretty low end stuff right there. You'd be looking at like a, what, it was 1650 at that point. And even then, the A750 destroys a 1650 in performance. So that makes this a really good feel-good story. I would absolutely have no problems whatsoever if I were building on a budget going, I've got $250 tops to spend on a graphics card. I would throw an A750 in there all day long. What I can't wait to test as we look into this driver once it becomes available to us is how is it performing on DX10 and 11 and 12? Are we seeing any uplift, or is this just a DX9 improvement? I suspect this is just a DX9 story. And again, that's because of the reason that we described. The hardware itself is not built with DX9 in mind. It is forward of that. However, I have to assume that there was enough pushback from users that have and play these older games saying it's absolute, trash on an Arc card. This is something they had to do. They had to make this a compelling reason to be able to say, hey, even though DX9 is more than a decade old at this point, like 15 years old or something like that, we need to be able to support it. And like I said, I always recommend these classic games to friends and family that are getting into PC gaming for the first time because they're just they're great games for only, what, $5 for a lot of them. It's worth supporting it. So this is a good thing to see. And it really makes me a lot more excited for what the future has when it comes to Intel Arc series. I would love to see a 790 or even like a 970. I guess that'd be the same. The naming is weird, right? Because that could be a GTX 970. But they did show here, compared to a 3060 12GB card, that in DX9 performance, oh no, wait, I did it back, hold on. But before they ended the keynote, but before they ended the conference call, they did go ahead and give us some comparison charts with an RTX 3060 12GB versus an A750 8GB in both DX9, 11, and 12 titles right here. So they're showing, with the exception of a couple of titles, that the A750 is beating the RTX 3060. Now again, it's a normalized chart at 1. We don't have a starting figure, and we don't have a cap. So that could be 1 to 1.1 to 0.9. We don't know what the range is. We don't know. They don't give us the max, which again, this is like Chartgate all over again. We've all complained about charts, and they're doubling down even harder on this. But it looks like the only titles so far that the 3060 is beating the A750, Team Fortress 2, Half-Life 2, StarCraft 2. No, not even StarCraft 2. Sorry. So Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2, both Source engines. And that's for DX9. And DX11, War Thunder, Riders Republic, and then barely being beaten in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And then it's faster in every other title in DX12. Now, that might not sound all that exciting to people, but let's look at, well, how much is an RTX 3060? I'm curious. The RTX 3060 right now is going for $390. $369 a Newegg for the cheapest one. Now, would you take an Intel Arc A750 for $249 and save $130 and put that towards your CPU, or just pay for your memory entirely, or put that in a whole nother chunk of your system? I would, especially if these charts, which we've already shown in reviews, the A750 holds up. So this is not just blowing smoke. And whether it's only a 10th faster, or 10% faster, 5% faster, faster's faster, even if it's the same performance, even if it's a little below the 3060, for $130 cheaper, you've got to consider it. So I thought that this was an important thing to talk about because of the fact that we're seeing a downloadable performance game, which is awesome. Anyway, that's where we're gonna end it there, guys. When this driver is in hand, we will absolutely go through and test it again and compare it to our original benchmarks, because that's my testing suite includes APIs from basically like DX10 and up. So DX9 wasn't even a part of it. So we'll have to do some original DX9 testing with our original driver and then post driver, just to see if these claims hold up, because of course we got to hold the brands accountable for their claims. Remember the 4070 Ti is 2 times faster than 3090 Ti. Remember how that bullshit turned out? We got to hold companies accountable. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.